This is the Fresh Concrete module for the UDOT Inspector Qualification Program. Before heading into the field, the inspector must make sure he has all the tools necessary to complete the concrete testing. This includes an air meter with a rod, rubber mallet, flat strike-off tool, water bottle, scoops, and a sponge or rag for cleaning the meter, a shovel, sampling container, a working platform, a measuring device, a thermometer, a water bucket and brush, a slump cone with its base, cylinder molds with covers, a trowel, and a high-low thermometer for the cure box. When arriving at the job site, choose a parking location that is close to the point of placement, but does not interfere with the contractor's trucks, equipment, and concrete placement activities. When setting up your testing area, choose a flat area that has easy access to the sampling location. This may require the use of a testing platform, such as a sheet of plywood. Set out all of your equipment and check that it is all ready to go. Upon arrival of the concrete, the inspector should request a copy of the delivery ticket from the driver or the contractor's representative. Check the ticket for the mix being delivered, verifying the source, admixtures, quantity, and ingredient proportions. Pay specific attention to the amount of water added to the mix. Pumped concrete can be visually inspected as the mix is placed in the pump, but acceptance testing must be done at the point of placement, which is after it is pumped. Specifications require sampling and testing of at least the first 2 trucks of any placement. Sampling and testing and making cylinders must be performed randomly on every 50 yards of concrete or portion thereof. When you are ready to sample, have the contractor place approximately 1 cubic foot of concrete into your sampling container. You should have enough material to perform air and slump testing and make any cylinders. If beams are required, a larger sample will be necessary. Prior to any testing, mix the sample thoroughly to ensure a consistent sample. For temperature testing, place the thermometer in the concrete at a location that has at least 3 inches of concrete surrounding the thermometer. After placing the thermometer, tamp the concrete around the thermometer to close up any voids created. Read the thermometer between 2 and 5 minutes after placement and record the temperature to the nearest degree Fahrenheit. For air content testing, fill the air meter bucket with concrete in 3 equal lifts. Each lift must be rodded 25 times with a 5/8 inch rod. Do not hit the bottom or sides forcibly when rodding. Rodding strokes of the upper 2 lifts should penetrate approximately 1 inch into the lift below. Tamp the sides of the bowl 10 to 15 times after rodding each lift. When the bowl is full, strike off the concrete to a smooth and level finish. Clean the edges of the bowl with a wet rag or sponge to create a good seal with the lid. Dampen the O-ring of the lid and fasten it to the base.
Borderline mass concrete.
Make sure the petcocks are open.
and then pour water into one petcock until the water comes out the other petcock, making sure to tip and roll the meter to remove trapped air bubbles. Pump the gauge to the initial pressure, or IP, that is identified on the gauge. Close the petcocks. Depress the lever and tap the bowl smartly with a rubber mallet at the same time. Tap the dial to settle the needle, and then read the air content to the nearest 0.1%. If lightweight concrete is being used, review the procedures for using the volumetric meter, or rollometer, with the crew's materials technician. For slump testing, make sure that the slump cone is moist and that the base is placed on a firm and level surface. Make sure the base plate is clean and damp, and then attach the slump cone to the base. Fill the slump cone with concrete in 3 equal lifts by volume. Each lift must be rodded 25 times with a 5/8 inch rod. Do not hit the bottom or sides forcibly when rodding. Rodding strokes of the upper 2 lifts should penetrate approximately 1 inch into the lift below. The last lift should be slightly overfilled to allow for settlement during rodding. If rodding causes the material to fall below the surface, additional material should be added and rodded to bring the surface of the material even with the top of the slump cone. Strike off the top of the material with a rolling and screeding motion. Clean any loose material from around the base of the cone and then lift the cone evenly, taking 3 to 7 seconds to remove the cone completely. Measure the slump from the top of the cone to the displaced center of the material. Record the slump to the nearest 1/4 inch. When making cylinders, it is best to write the cylinder information on the mold prior to filling. Fill the 4x8 inch cylinder molds in 2 equal lifts. Rod each lift 25 times with a 3/8 inch rod. If you are using 6x12 inch cylinder molds, use 3 lifts and a 5/8 inch rod. Tap the sides of the cylinder lightly 10 to 15 times after rodding each lift. Cylinder molds can be vibrated instead of rodded for slumps less than 3 inches.
Easier than a bunch of planks in a wheelbarrow or 5-gallon buckets. QA's carrying buckets, so I got a little video of them. Nice. I got him video just to
Strike off the top of the cylinder and smooth the surface. Place the lids on each cylinder before moving. Ensure that the cylinder information is written on each cylinder mold. Transport the molds to the initial storage container carefully. Store the cylinders upright in a level container. The container should have a high-low thermometer to verify that the temperature remains between 60 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit for the initial storage period.
Watch out, Brad.
When making beams, place the concrete in the mold in 2 equal lifts. Rod each lift 1 time for every 2 square inches. This is approximately 60 times for a 6-inch by 20-inch mold. Beams can be built with vibrators instead of rodding for mixes with slumps less than 3 inches. Tap the outside of the mold 10 to 15 times after rodding each lift. Strike off the top of the beam and then level and smooth the surface. Clean the edges and ensure that the beam is properly marked. The beam information can be written on the side of the mold or lightly scratched into the surface of the concrete. Place the beam on a level surface near the placement or in the contractor's storage area. When finished with the testing, dispose of all remaining material at a location designated by the contractor. This may be a dedicated spoils pile, a washout bin, or behind the formwork of the placement. Wash all the tools and equipment used for testing and clean the testing area in preparation for the next set of tests. Do not leave the equipment uncleaned between samples, as this can lead to buildup that can be hard to remove and can affect the test results. It is also good practice to rinse out your sampling container to prevent buildup.
Alright, so that worked out pretty good. I got a shot of them clean